Hey everybody, these are my chapter overviews. I try to keep them pretty informal. As you can see, I'm here in my home office, got the old t-shirt on, flip the hair back. Don't do anything too fancy. But I do want to make a connection, especially with my online classes, with the textbook. Because normally if we were together in the classroom, we'd have some mini lectures, and just key points of the chapter. And then they would be working on those class activities like you are working on, and then you're summarizing your activities in the agenda summaries. So I've got my big hardback teacher book, right? Boone and, what are we? Boone and Kurtz. You guys have the binder ready version, which I also have sitting next to me here, because they collate pretty well. There's a couple of things that are a little bit different here and there, but they're pretty much the same. So I'm not going to give out page numbers because if they're different from my instructor's textbook, I don't want to get us all confused. So chapter 1, this is our chapter 1 overview. Oh, just to forewarn you, I have a new kitten. His name is Lincoln. We call him Booby because he's a little baby. He was a tiny baby. He's only 7 months old and he's ginormous. And whenever I talk, he seems to think he should be on camera. And then in the chair, let me see, behind me there's a little cushion. And my other kitty, my old man, Mr. Green, you might see him sitting there. He's actually the office manager, tries to keep me in line. Most days, though, I think he's pretty much sleeping on the job. So I'm not going to redo these every time a cat gets in the way or, oh my gosh, if my dogs start barking, because I just simply don't have time for all that. And so let's go to chapter 1 in our textbook. And it basically just starts off with what is business. And I think it's pretty obvious for most of us that business is really just taking a bunch of inputs, whatever that is, and creating some sort of product or service and then selling it to somebody else so you can make some money, right? That's what we do for profit, right? So you guys can, and I'm not going to go through this when I do my chapter overviews. I want to keep them less than 15 minutes because I know everybody's busy. Not-for-profit is the next section in the book. They talk about not-for-profit. Now, most of you guys are probably really familiar with nonprofits, right? The American Red Cross. Anytime you go on some of those charity walks or charity 5K run or something, those are usually for nonprofits. And they're trying to figure out a different method for making or generating income because they're not going to use their profits for personal gain. So read that section carefully so you understand the difference of what is the mission or what is the reason behind a nonprofit versus a for-profit business. And then as we go on, we look at, before I leave that, read that section because it's interesting about not-for-profits. We think that if you're doing good things that nothing bad can happen. But you still have to have a lot of the same considerations as a business operating for profit. Like, for example, how are you branded? So Nike, right? What kind of athletes that they invest in to do their commercials? That's how they're branding themselves, right? Nonprofits do the same thing. So you're going to see movie stars and things like that do their advertising campaigns to try to get us to, donate money or participate in their activities or whatever it is. But it can backfire just like a for-profit organization can. So for example, like if you're familiar with Lance Armstrong, the Tour de France, he's like, the god of Tour de France. He's won it like a bazillion times, only to find out later that he's been doping, right? So the foundation, he has his own foundation, the Lance Armstrong Foundation, but he was also a spokesperson for other charities. What does that do? What does that do to your credibility, so to speak, if one of your celebrities or however you're branding yourself kind of falls apart? Okay. Now the next section is this factors of production. It's just like business has their own terminology, just like anything else. If you're taking an accounting class, it has its own language. Business has its own language as well. So if you were an economist, you're going to talk about the factors of production. There's 4 basic factors of production. We have our natural resources, right? We have our capital, which comes in a lot of different ways, a lot of different forms. So make sure you read that carefully. And then, of course, our human resources, which is usually our most costly form or factor of production. And then entrepreneurship. And of course, that's that willingness to take risks on your own, to be an owner-operator of your own business. That can be the small diner downtown, or something as huge as Ashley Furniture. That is actually a privately held company by the owner and his sons and his family, even though it's huge, it's ginormous. Okay, so if you look at the private enterprise system, again, this is just more terminology. That's when we're referring to an economic system. Our system in the United States is considered like a private enterprise system, meaning that we have rights. You have the right to own capital. You have the right to sell things like that. Capitalism, you can read about that, how we compete, how we differentiate ourselves when we compete. That's the way that the US, that's the way our system looks at it. Now, if you were going to go to China or somewhere else, you'd see that they do not have a private enterprise system. That's completely different. So the basic rights of the private enterprise system, what we take for granted here in the United States, actually, you know, is this right to private property, our right to keep our profits, that kind of thing, our freedom of choice and fair competition. If you look at figure 1.1 in your textbook, it's got the little round colored wheel in it. It shows those rights that we in the United States take advantage of. Okay. Now, the entrepreneurship alternative, again, that's just the willingness of an individual to, you know, start a new venture on their own. And of course, you also are on your own when it comes to the risks involved. Let me see here. Where are we? The different eras in history. There's 7. In this new book, they talk about 7. There used to be 6. But the reason there's 7 is because we are evolving and changing. So if you look in your book, you see that we had the colonial period. That's like the historical stuff, industrial revolution, the age of industrial entrepreneurs, the production era, marketing era. Now, where we start getting into some newness here is when we talk about the relationship era. The relationship era and the social era. And this is due to technology. Technology has changed the way that we look at our customer, the way that we do business. So the old way, okay, and I'm old, right? The old way was it was transaction based, right? I produce it, you buy it, it's a transaction. Pretty simple, right? Today is more, this is where that relationship era kind of comes in. This is where we're starting to really look at, you know, building customer loyalty, long-term relationships, that kind of thing. And with this new way, of course, it's been changed and enhanced through the social era, which is number 7, right? This is what's new to our industry, is talking about the social era. And I've actually, I think, got you doing an activity on your agenda related to the social era. And I think that's on that career kickstart when it might have to do with, I think it's the tips for social networking. Because this is all new. I mean, we may think that, you know, some of you, if you're very young, you really don't know any difference. But for those of us of any age at all, 30 and over, you know, especially 40 and over, or like me, 50 and over, right? This is a whole new way of looking at business, is just consideration of how we're so socially connected. So your business needs to think about that. What do you got going on Facebook? Are your employees twittering things about work? All kinds of considerations. So read that and then work on that activity, and that'll get us a little bit deeper into that concept. Very interesting stuff, though. It's really exciting stuff. It's really different. And companies now are creating new positions within their companies to manage this. They have like the VP of social networking now. Those are real terms. Those are real jobs. Yeah. Now, next section, strategic alliances. We can make alliances with a lot of different people, organizations, for a lot of different reasons. So you can just read through that. And they talk about what a strategic alliance is and what they look like. The green advantage, that section just talks about another way that we are building relationships. This has to do with, you know, energy and things like that. Green initiatives, which thank goodness you younger people are really into this, because we need you to save the planet. Because I think some of the old ways, the things that we just use water any way we want and use our resources, our natural resources, without thinking about renewing them, you know, we've done some bad things to our planet. So the green initiative is going to be big, and it has opened up a new way for more jobs, innovations in different businesses that can open up. It's very cool. Now, today's business workforce, that section, changes in the workforce. You can read that. It's talking about the aging population. Oh my gosh, that's me, right? Aging population. I'm at the tail end of the baby boomers, right? But the baby boomers, that's the biggest group of people in this country is the baby boomers. Well, the millennials are pretty close, or else they might be just a smidge bigger, actually. But our lifestyles are very different, how we view things, what we buy, how we buy, all very different. And that has a huge impact on employers. It impacts who you're going to sell your product to, and then who's going to help you make it, that kind of thing, right? Increasingly diverse workforce, that section talks about, diversity in itself. Diversity is a beautiful thing. How do you generate new ideas in your company? How do you understand your customer better? You do that by having a diverse business or workforce, right? But it also has its challenges. I can't tell you, I've been a corporate trainer for over 15 years, and one of the biggest topics that I spent a lot of training on in the last, at least the last 5 to 7 years, 5 for sure, was on 4 generations in the workplace. How do we all learn to get along in the workplace? That kind of thing. Now, outsourcing and changing the nature of work. Again, terminology. So just read the definitions about what outsourcing is versus offshoring versus nearshoring, okay? Because what that does is also gives us a lot of flexibility and mobility in both our workforce, our natural resources, how we get things, all that good stuff. I mean, we have what's called permanent part-time workers now. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? To know that you might be a permanent part-time worker. These are people who are working 3 jobs because they can't get full-time employment, but they're considered permanent. Therefore, they don't get benefits. Working 3 jobs to try to make the income of 1 job and not be eligible for benefits. So this is an interesting time for us, and we're starting to see a push against this in our country, which we need to do. We need to move against that. Anyway, innovation through collaboration. That's just a brief little overview of what that means there. You can read that on your own. The 21st century manager, importance of a vision, but I think more important than that is the importance of critical thinking and creativity. Now, critical thinking, we're not born being critical thinkers, by the way, and we're not very good at it. It takes work, it takes education, and it takes some expertise and experiences. You got to make mistakes, right? To learn from them, to be a critical thinker. So for example, I ask my students, ask yourself 3 hard questions before you email me, right? Because you don't want to run to your boss, because when I kick you out of here, right, and you go into the workplace and you're going to be running your own business, but you're always going to have a boss, right, until you work your way up to the top. You don't want to run to your boss every 2 minutes asking a question, because they're going to get pretty annoyed with you. What we see employers asking in the top 5, if you were to ask them about their top 10, usually within the top 5, they want critical thinkers, they want innovators. They want people who can think on their feet, solve their own problems, and then come back to them with solutions. Now, that doesn't always happen. That doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? You do have questions. But if you ask yourself 3 really hard questions and work your way to a point where, geez, I just can't get past this. Now you go to your boss, your mentor, your teacher, your instructor, whatever it is, right? Because then we're more than happy to say, wow, you worked really hard on this. Here's where your bump in the road is, because there's a reason why we're in this seat, right? We have experiences and education and other things that you just don't have yet. Or sometimes it's just that, you just gotta brainstorm with someone, So look at this idea about the things that they're looking for, brainstorming they mention, they think about how to make familiar concepts unfamiliar, plan ways to rearrange your thinking, those kinds of things. I think they have a list of like 7 things in this section. And then the ability to lead change. Change is a topic unto itself. It's huge. You should study change management if you're going to run a business successfully, because the only thing that's constant in business is change, right? Well, that pretty much sums up the chapter. They talk a little bit about what kind of companies are admired. You guys can look at that. So there you go, Chapter 1 overview. I will post these on our in our learning plan so that you can find them quick and easy. I will upload these to YouTube so that you will they'll stream faster for you than if I put them on a streaming network. And YouTube also has embedded in it a closed caption feature. If you need that capability, you'll be able to listen to these or have the closed captioning done for you through YouTube. Always. See you later in the next update. Bye.